Okay, so welcome everyone, and this session will be recorded. So I would like to start with the traditional owner of the land where we meet and study and live. And I pay my respect to past, present, and emerging. Today we have, I would say, Martin Levins with us. He is a lecturer of ICT in education at University of New England. But prior to that, and Martin, I let Martin talk about that. Prior to that, he had about 20 years experience in working with Department of Education, and he is a winner of lots of prestigious grants and awards. So, today he will be talking about the new curriculum, and we will especially look at ICT area, and not the whole thing, but yeah. So over to you, Martin.
Thanks, Kashmira, and howdy everyone. Yeah, I'll give you a little background. I'm a recovering director of IT at a large school in New South Wales, but I started teaching yonks ago. I mean, literally, it was ages ago. And I taught science. I went to school as a science teacher, started out science and mathematics, saw the light after about 10 years and started working with computers in education. So my first experience was building my own computer back in the mid-70s, I guess, and then
sorry, what was the size of that computer, Martin? It was like
huge.
Half a room.
It was huge. Yeah, it had 1 kilobyte of memory, and a tiny, weeny little keyboard, and you used to. I'll show you. Sinclair 80. It was done by a guy called Clive Sinclair in the UK. So it was this little thing, a ZX80. So that's the inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it had 1 kilobyte. And if you were really rich, you could buy a thing that plugged into the back that gave it an extra 16K of memory. But you had to be really careful, because if anyone walked across the room, it was enough to shake it and it would break the contact and everything would crash. And of course, there's no such thing as a hard drive. You saved your material to a cassette drive. I don't think there's any pictures of it in here. So it saved it as audio signals onto a cassette tape. Oh, there, you can see it in there, this one here. So there's the little ZX81, and or ZX80 this one is, and it's plugged into a tape recorder, and you press record on the tape recorder and it sends the information out. And then when you want to load it back in again, you press play and it brings it in and off you go. So it worked okay. It was a bit better than the punch cards that I'd used at Sydney University before that. And then gradually worked my way up to, I was teaching in South Australia at this stage, and in a Catholic school down the southeast of South Australia. And this thing called a BBC Micro came out, a BBC Model B. And if we look at that, this is the beastie here that you've got. This is actually the more advanced version that came out later called a BBC Master. But again, we were saving stuff to tape drives, but then after I'd had it for a little while, you can see just sneaking in the background there, I'm not sure you can see it, there's a little disk drive. And you could save stuff on disks, which was just astounding. These little devices, these little computers here came out at about the same time as the PC Junior and as the Apple II, or the Apple I actually. They came out at the same time. But they were pretty impressive in what they could actually do. The Master in particular, this one here, has 2 little sockets sitting over there, and you used to be able to buy a word processor on a chip, and you'd plug it in, and then it became a word processor. You plug another one in and it would become a spreadsheet. You plug another one in, it would become a database.
It's
So
like a
quite a
game
different way.
console, isn't it? It's like a game console. So whatever game you put in and then plug in and then you play that.
Yeah. But it also had the ability to connect up to a second processor, which was very advanced in those days. So when I moved to New South Wales, we set these up within the school. We had 10 to start with, and within 2 years we had about 30, and they were hooked up all around the school. They were joined up with telephone cable, and that worked for them for network cable.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a satellite receiver module in them so that we could pick up the weather patterns. We had a thing called a teletext terminal. And if you're under 40, you probably don't remember what that is. But that was a very early form of messaging on televisions. So that you know, horrible static 8-bit yucky text.
I don't
Anyway,
know all of this. So
you never heard of it?
no.
Teletext. There you go.
I mean, that doesn't make me any younger, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just my.
Well, this is what you used to get. So you get this on your TV, and that was your TV guide. So if you typed 304, you'd get Gattenall blows stuns Sunderland. You get something about the football in the Sunderland. So it was a very early form of menuing, and you can see all this stuff here is very retro. But that's what we kicked off with. And then in 1987, myself and a mate bought a Mac each, and we bought a laser writer, and one of the first in Australia, and we set ourselves up as a typesetting bureau. In 1989, I bought my first hard drive, which was 20 megabytes, and it cost $2,800. So the other day I bought.
Then you bought it. Come on, huh?
Yeah, well, we needed to store stuff. That was what the cost of it was. So in today's terms, it was very expensive. So anyway, long and short of it, I got very interested in it. I ended up teaching myself how to program computers, and then got really interested in what it could do for students. So would you have covered a thing called TPAC in your course yet? Technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge?
Yeah, I think they have in the first couple of weeks, so they may be reading it now because they're in week 2 or week 3. So yeah, around that.
Okay.
What about, so why don't we ask them, did you read about TPAC in the theoretical frameworks? Not yet?
Yeah, I've covered it in a separate unit as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was done by 2 guys called Mishra and Kohler quite some time ago. And it was an advance on pedagogical content knowledge. They chucked in technology. And when I first looked at this, I thought, well, yeah, if you're going to teach successfully with technology, you need to know how to drive the technology. You need to know the content that you're teaching, and you need to be able to teach. You need the pedagogy, which is what you take out of that basic diagram, I think. But really, it's much deeper than that. It's to the extent where the pedagogy changes when you're using technology, or can change. The content can also change. So if you're teaching in exactly the same way as you did without technology, then you're sort of missing the point to a certain extent, and it will never, ever be successful. I'm just seeing in the chat there, Commodore 64. Yeah, okay. They were around at that time too. So to give you an example, I once got into trouble from the head of mathematics at one of the schools I was at, because I was teaching year 4s, and the year 4 kids were learning a XY grid, sometimes called a Cartesian plane. Right, so they were learning to coordinates on the coordinate plane, X, Y, however you want to look at it. And I got into trouble because they're not supposed to do that until they're in year 7 or year 8. And I said, but they wanted to know. No, it doesn't matter. You don't teach them until they're in year 7 or year 8. So I said to myself, and I thought, well, why why the hell, what's going on here? Why are we limiting that to something which is in, year 7 and 8, if the kids can cope with it in an earlier time? Now, you may have seen this or one of its simulacrums, a thing called Scratch, which enables kids to program stuff. All right. So they might say, here's a little cat, and what we're going to do is we're going to get him to move 100. We're going to get him to move 100 steps. So every time I click on that, he moves 100 steps. All right. So you say, okay, how do you get him to move backwards? And it doesn't take long for the kids to work out. If you put a minus sign in front of it and take him back to where he is, you can get him back to wherever the hell he is. Then we can say, well, I want him to always start up there. And you'll notice if you look in this little area here, that as I move him around, that automatically changes. You'll also notice if you look over here where it says go to, at the moment it's saying -150, -47. If I move him over there, that changes to 162 and 81. Are you guys familiar with Scratch? Have you seen this sort of stuff before? Okay. So feel free to chip in, by the way. I don't want this to be a monologue.
So
by
Martin,
all means, either.
Martin, there is one unit called ECU 205, and if somebody has done it, probably they would have covered Scratch, because that's a basic. There's one of the assignment where they create something from using Scratch. So, but yeah, our units don't focus that much on technology.
Okay, so I'll finish this off in a sec, but I'll just finish the story. So that means that if the kid says, well, I always want to start him there, there's the instruction that says that. So it doesn't matter where you move him. As soon as you click on that, he goes back to where he starts from. All right? So we could say, all right, well, what I'd like this thing to do, I want you to draw a square. So we're going to move 100 steps. We usually get the kids to step this out in the classroom, and then we're going to turn. How many degrees do we need to turn?
90.
Now, well, over here it says 90, but that doesn't mean anything to a kid. But this does. They can see what 90 looks like. And that's what we want to do. So I'll actually make that 90. I could type that in over the top if I wanted to. So therefore, I've got to get him to turn 90, and not 905, but 90. And so, okay, what I'm going to do is to do that. Click on it, and he goes and turns, goes down and turns, goes and turns, goes up and turns. All right. So he's writing out a square. And then we'd say to the kids, okay, well, down here, you can get him to use a pen. And we can say, okay, put your pen down and then do that stuff. And there he's drawn a square. And then we got another thing where we can say, get rid of everything. All right, and send him back to where he started. We'll go back to there, but the pen's still drawing, have you noticed? We'll get rid of that. And we need to make him go around the right way. So how do we do that? Well, we probably want him to turn or point in a particular direction. That might even be better. Let's get him to point in a particular direction. And again, that's 90, he's pointing straight up. And then we'll get him to erase anything that was there. Can you see what's happening? We're starting to build what is going on. Erase everything and then put the pen down, and then he's ready to go for his next bit of business. So it's okay, if we want to do a square, we do this once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, okay? So let's go back to the beginning and erase everything. We can do something different here. We can go to control and we can say, I want you to repeat that 4 times. Right? If we click that, there he goes, and he draws the square really quickly. And now we can start to say, okay, what we'd like you to do is I want you to do that at a particular time. So when I press the space bar, I want you to do that. And when I press, let's say, E for erase, I want you to get rid of stuff. So now I'm going to press the space bar. He draws a square. I press the E, it disappears. Get the idea? So this is all based on a drama background. And I'm just about to finish this. What we can do is to go and choose a backdrop. And what I'll do is to choose this backdrop. And you can see what he's actually doing. Now, you would have seen this in probably year 7 or year 8 mathematics yourself, if you can remember back that far. And you can see what he's doing. I press the space bar and you can see how he's drawing that. Press the E, ready to go again. And we can build on this and get the kids to say, okay, now I want you, what do you draw a triangle? What's the triangle going to be? And to save the time, we can say that's 3, move 100 steps. A lot of people will say 60 degrees here. I'm not going to go into why, but it's actually 120. So now I press the space bar and he draws
3.
whoa, 34 times. And he needs to do it 3 times, doesn't he? Get rid of that and press E. Now you'll notice that there's no one saying to me, you're doing the wrong thing. I'm saying, oh, well, that's weird. Why did it do it so many times? I typed in 34, not 3. I'll fix it. And off I go. So in other words, when you talk to kids about using this, they don't say, no one says to them, you're wrong. Or if they do, they're stupid. The kids say, there's something wrong with this and I have to fix it. And that's totally different to the way in which a lot of kids learn. In mathematics in particular, they're taught one way of doing things and with one correct answer in a lot of instances. And if a kid doesn't get it, well, then they lose. Right? They lose out on the whole thing. Now, what I'm describing to you here is a part of the Australian curriculum called digital technologies, where the kids are using this to provide a solution, a digital solution. So they might build a game, they might build something to demonstrate their understanding, for argument's sake. So up here, I've got, if I sign into this, I've got a bunch of thingos in here, which will give you an idea of the sorts of things that we do with this with kids. Back in when I was working after I finished, I retired from teaching basically in 2015, got horribly bored, worked for Queensland Department of Education for a while on Bring Your Own Technology, wrote a book on it with another guy. I wrote a couple of books on it actually. And then Akara asked me to join them in doing a thing called the Digital Technologies in Focus, and we'll talk more about that later. So one of the things that we did was that we used this thing to help year 2 kids tell a story for year kindergarten kids. And basically, this is all done with, it's all kicked off with when I press the green flag. I'm going to press the green flag. And the idea is that this little girl called Amy can be moved backwards and forwards using the forward and back arrows. She can move up with the up and down arrows. And what they've got to do is to get her across without touching the snake. If they touch the snake, it goes straight back to where she came from. But if she gets through, she reaches her goal and everyone's happy. All right. Now, when you think about it, this is actually a story arc that students at that year level are supposed to be able to do. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So this is the beginning, this is the challenge, this is in the middle, and then they have to get to their end. And when they get the end, they get the star, the wand, whatever it is, and then you could take them to the next level and do something else. So every single kid in year 2 at this school, which is in Wodonga in Victoria, managed to do that. It was their idea that you use Amy. It was their idea that you used a snake. Some kids used a lightning bolt. Some kids used chocolates instead of the wand. And most kids, for some reason, chose Rio de Janeiro as the beach on which they wanted to do this. Now, if you think about it, what mathematics have they learnt? What have they learnt about telling a story? And you can also see that this story arc, that she's doing, here's the beginning, she must get past this, then she gets the goal, is basically the story arc of every adventure movie and every game, every computer game. Now, maybe lots of little beginnings, middles, and ends all joined together, but that's basically the storytelling arc. So we were teaching the kids English, we were also teaching them mathematics, because they had to work out where all these things are. They had to work out the logic of how to do all this stuff. This has got screwed up somehow. These little bits of business here are the little notes that we got them to make about why they did that particular little thing. So here we've got a combination of digital technologies, of digital literacy, of mathematics, and of English. Now, the reason why I'm stressing this is that you'll find that a lot of jurisdictions, and I did a lot of work in the Northern Territory as part of this, and the Northern Territory used to go and see a school and the principal would say, we've got no time for this stuff. And a lot of them would refer to it as playing games. Now, I've got nothing wrong with that. I think play-based learning is very, very powerful. But a lot of the uninformed people would say the kids aren't learning anything out of this. Well, when you look at what they've done here, let me just stop that. This is basically a procedural text. And if you look at what students have to do in their NAPLAN tests, and of course that's the be all and end all of a lot of schools, is how well their school does in NAPLAN, often because the principals get paid basically if they achieve NAPLAN results lifted. We've also got a lot of mathematics in there. So when you come back to this TPAC thing, the fact that I could now say to you, we're going to choose the XY grid for this, and there it is. This is what the kids are dealing with it. If I said X position and Y position to them, they wouldn't know what I was talking about. But if I said you want it to go there, what's the numbers that correspond to that? All of a sudden it makes sense to them. And something that Piaget told us, and you must have heard of him, one of the early educational psychologists, one of the things that he stressed was that kids couldn't handle that because it was too abstract until they got to year 11 or 12. And the thing about ICT is it makes abstract concrete. So even though the kids are still working at a concrete or a concrete symbolic area, they can understand abstract concepts because this makes it concrete and makes it easy for them to understand what's going on. Not only that, they also have an inbuilt, I want to achieve this, I want to make this game, this is cool. So you've got a motivation component built into that. And lastly, and I think most importantly, the kids learn from one another. All of a sudden, you'll go up and say to a kid, how did you do that? And the kid said, I don't know, he told me how to do it, or she told me how to do it, or we talked about it together and we worked out what the best way of doing it was. So you end up with a lot of collaborative learning, and it's not copying. They're not copying one another because they're all making stuff that they want to make. They're taking something that someone else has done and modifying it or remixing it for their own purpose. So that technological, pedagogical content knowledge thing is more than just you need to know technology, you need to know how to turn on an overhead a digital projector, say. You need to know that the content and the pedagogy changes. If I sit down with a class of 26 kids and say, right, go and get this one from the left, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. But if I give them an idea about what's going on and say, okay, go up and see what you can find out, it works quite well because it automatically differentiates within that classroom. Some kids will need more help than others, and some will say, I don't know what to do. Okay, fine. And you give them a hand, or you get one of the kids who's obviously a real gun and say, listen, can you just show Mary over here or Bill or whatever what's going on? So the classroom becomes very dynamic and they learn all sorts of interesting things. So this is a combination really of a number of different bits of business. First of all, the kids are getting some sort of procedural text happening. They're also getting some mathematics which is happening, and it's true mathematics. They're seeing relationships that exist between numbers. It's not just arithmetic where they're just learning how to divide this number by another number for no reason. Right? We're going to learn our long division. We're going to divide 400 by 34. Who needs that? No one. Right? So this puts it in context, and all of a sudden they need it, they learn it. We're also looking though at, okay, I've got to negotiate this. I've got to get to the right website. I may have to set up myself with my own account, or my teacher sets up an account for me. I can now go and share this information with other people, and they can make comments on it and say, I really enjoyed this, what you did, or whatever, because we send or used to send the links, the URLs out to the parents and say, go and have a look at it and comment on it and say, what do you think? So in other words, you get a more authentic audience, certainly much broader than the one audience, the audience of one that you normally have with the teacher in the classroom. So we've got 4 things happening here, or 5 things really: the creativity, the procedural texts which relate to literacy, the clarity of purpose and the clarity of language that they need. They're doing mathematics, even though they don't know that they're doing mathematics. And I'm not an adherent to this idea of let's teach kids by stealth. I'm not going that way. I'm just saying that the kids are learning more than they would learn in a normal classroom. But they've also got the digital literacy side of things, which I'll go into in a sec, where they've got to work out, okay, how do I do all this thing? If I want a copy of it to take home, how do I do that? Well, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to save it to my computer rather than using it online. I've got further differentiation, whereas I can say to the kids, okay, you are learning your native language is Arabic, right? So let's swap it to Arabic. And you'll notice that not only does the language change, your comments don't, of course, because they were written in English to begin with, but it also now goes right to left instead of left to right, which is much more consonant, or exactly consonant with what it is that they're dealing with. So a number of different people that I've worked with have said, okay, well, we're going to do this in French. Well, French are left to right, but now everything's in French. Con la touche, flèche haut, which is arrow up, et pressé. In other words, when you touch the up arrow is pressed, then you go and do this. S'orienter à 0, avancer à 50 pas, 50 steps, and off you go. So you can use this as well to teach language, where you can say to kids, you know, how are you going to, let's do this in French, let's do this in German, let's do this in Japanese, and flip backwards and forwards. So what I'm really referring to here is a cross-curricular or even transdisciplinary approach to learning. It puts it in context. It gives them a reason for doing what it is that you want them to do. And Uncle Bob. I'm going to stop there for a sec because people must have questions or comments.
I was going to mention I currently work in a school already as an SSO, and they have the specific subject of digital technologies, and they use Scratch quite a lot. And I also find it's really good when they look over their own work and double check. Like I find a lot of the older students aren't checking their work, whereas they have to check it with this to make sure they've followed all the steps correctly. And then, like you said, there was that collaboration between students to check each other's work as well.
Yeah. So, Crystal, you're in a school which has a lot in common with other schools, where they separate digital technologies from all other subjects, and the difficulty there is that they don't see the relevance of what they're doing. It becomes a game, and it becomes something which is interesting for a while, and then they drop out because there's no purpose for it. Now, they might go home and start drawing games for themselves and all that sort of caper, you know, at home, and that's fine. But a lot of teachers say that we don't have time to do that. The curriculum's too full. Well, using this approach in 2005, I think, myself and another teacher, excuse me, took on the challenge of teaching Year 7 students 6 subjects at once, I think it was. There was medieval history taught as part of history, surprisingly, English, mathematics, science, and design and technology. 5 subjects. And we taught them all at the same time. And these were the objectives that we had to meet. And after one term, we had done 3/4 of the work that was required for the entire number of units, number of subjects for the year. Well, what are we going to do now? We've finished it all. Do we send the kids home? What are we doing? So, no, let's see how far we can push these guys. And we then broadened it to encounter more and more different things. And we found that we ended up with clearly an embarrassment of time. Once you start combining these things, A, it makes sense to kids, and secondarily, it gives you more time to talk with kids, more time to learn about them, more time to learn about their interests, more time to customize things for what it is that they want to do. In primary school, you can do that. Secondary school, it's a little bit harder, because ultimately what kids learn in secondary school is determined by bus timetables. So it's very, very difficult to get that transdisciplinarity happening. Kashmira.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in the interest of like everyone, that all that you discussed, they may include that into assignment 2, which is a report, in which, so one of the assignment, Martin, is a report, and where there is a scenario where the school management asks them to implement technology in the school. So, and they have to suggest a piece of technology or bunch of technologies that will prepare the students to be 21st century citizen. So they have those 21st century skills in it. So all that you have discussed, like, interdisciplinary and also cross-curricular, all of that. So for instance, if I was writing a report, I would say, okay, I am proposing that they learn Scratch, and because it's free, and this is like a variety of things that you can do. So I'm just putting that in context for everyone, that just also listen to this whole conversation in the perspective that it will be, you may well use it for your assignment 2 as well.
Yeah, and then you're going to try looking at your course outline there. The TPAC thing comes into, okay, we're going to put this into the school, but do the teachers understand how to use it? So the TPAC will inform what professional learning will need to be done by the teachers to allow them to take maximum advantage of the
Martin,
intervention.
What was your experience with school teachers? Did they had this all of that insight into how the technology is used, or they use it for like one particular instance and then move on and forget about it, or they constantly make that, okay, in term 1 we learned this, and see what we are doing in term 2, it is this is how it related to that, or just every term it's all finished and move ahead and forget about the last term?
Yeah, it depends on the teacher, and it depends on the school culture. It depends upon the leadership direction, and it depends upon the jurisdiction. So in some of the schools that I worked with in East Arnhem Land, for argument's sake, right in the, Maningrida, Ramingining, Milingimbi, Galwinku, Garmadi, Numbulwar, all of those places are in there. Groot Island, Halyangurda, Bakamba, and Urugu. Those were the real battle you had there was continuity. In one of the schools I was at, which I think was in Urugu, on Groot Island, we had 7 principals in 3 years, and that created a real issue. But if a school is stable and the leadership in the school wants to go down this track, then all of a sudden you're in a better position. But when we worked with ACARA with 160 schools throughout Australia, disadvantaged schools, we would find that often we became performing SEALs. So we'd turn up at the school, the kids would have this amazing experience, and then the teacher would say, oh, that's great, I'm going to try that next time. And you come back 3 months later and nothing had changed. absolutely nothing. So you were just this, circus that would come to town once every 3 months and off you go. But for the schools who did bite the bullet and have a go, it took a long time, because teachers are not, teachers aren't lazy and teachers aren't anti-technology. A lot of schools make it so that the technology is very difficult to deploy in the classroom. They put all sorts of restrictions on it. In working with some kindergarten kids, and you know what kindergarten kids are like, having to type their name in and then this bizarre password that was like a nuclear launch code, having those kids to type something into a computer, you get them all to log on and then you've got 2 minutes left in the period. And a teacher doesn't want to waste that amount of time. It's very frustrating. It's frustrating for the kids. It's frustrating for others. So it's that's quite difficult. But if you can show teachers that kids are learning and are really interested, and the teachers who come up to you after you've done a demonstration lesson and you say, what did you notice about that? And they say, that guy over there, or this girl, or these two, never do anything in the classroom. And I couldn't get them away from it. They just wanted to do more and more and more. Why do you think that is? And often it's got to do with student agency. There's not someone else telling them what to do all the time. It's them having some decision making about how they're going to do something. And you'll come across this, if you've not already done so, with the Universal Design for Learning. And the benefit then comes about by the teacher saying, the kids are really enjoying this and they're learning a lot. And the parents are saying, what are you doing in class? My kid is coming home and raving about the sorts of things that they're doing. They've never done that before. And all of a sudden the teacher says, well, maybe this is worth a second look. Right? So they go off and they have a squiz and see what it is that they wanted to do. Has anyone else got any questions? Yes, definitely, Michaela. It does have a whole bunch of languages. Not all of them are there. I wanted particularly to have this available in Yongamata, which is, most of you would know if you're from Darwin. The Yolngu Nation is very strong. Its language is well developed and well kept, but it fell below the 15,000 people that were needed to devote someone to do the transliteration, or the translation, I should say.
So
anyway.
It could be from the whole country, isn't it? Like we can sign a petition. Who decided?
Well, it's very awkward in Australian Aboriginal culture, as you know, because there's something in the order of 260 different languages, and they're not dialects. They're separate languages, as you may already have encountered. Dealing with shop holders in particular. We were on Umbacumba at one stage, and we went to the local little store to get something to eat for lunch. And the guy behind the counter said, "Oh, what are you blokes doing?" I said, "Oh, we're working with the kids up in the school, Umbacumba." And he said, "Oh, yeah, they're bloody illiterate." And I said, "Mate, they know 6 languages. How many do you know?" One of them just doesn't happen to be English. Anyway, I might get off my hobby horse. So you can go and have a squiz at that scratch thing. It's a lot of fun, particularly if you've got a handy 8-year-old kicking about the place. It's really cool. I've stuffed that up, I think, but anyway, it doesn't matter. We'll come back to it later on. So if we now go to this Australian curriculum thing, I've set the scene, I hope. So what I want to do now is to talk about, okay, well, what are you going to do? What's this thing all about? So you get to the Australian curriculum by clicking on this thing here, or you can just type, I think it's just type V9 in front of it, and it will take you to the version 9 of the curriculum. Previous iteration was 8.4. Now, there's been seemingly a lot of change from 8.4, but largely it's been in clarification. So when 8.4 was being designed, and it's designed under the direction of the education ministers in every state and territory in Australia. So ACARA is a statutory authority that takes its instructions from the ministers for education. It's sometimes a silly thing, but anyway, and then says, okay, this is what you've got to do. So they said, no, we need a concise curriculum. You're only allowed to have 2 bullet points for each content area. So what happened was, there's no way that you do it 2 bullet points. I mean, that's an accountant's view. And it became a bit confusing for teachers because they would say, you've got to do this and that. Well, it's only 1 bullet point, this and that. But often they couldn't see the link between the 2. So version 9 has separated those out now after a few education ministers were taken out the back of the bike shed and hit over the head. And we've now ended up with something that's a lot clearer. Now, a lot of people will say you're supposed to have cut the curriculum down and it's gone from 50 content units to 90. And I said, well, that 90 was already there, but this lays each one out much more clearly to do this stuff. So how many people have had a look at this website? Anyone? Beulah? Yeah, okay, cool. What are your thoughts, Joy?
I did.
Michaela? Okay, what are your thoughts?
I think it is much clearer, less confusing, as I do notice there's less contents. So I don't know, I think I like it better compared to the 8.4 version.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. I think you've got a lot of fiddling around that you can do. But I'm sorry, I cut you off. What did you want to say?
No, it's okay. Like, this is just my opinion. Maybe because I don't know, I started to work with the version 9 very earlier. So I started as soon as it came out.
Okay, so you're more familiar with it.
I prefer it compared to.
Okay, cool. All right, sounds good to me. Okay, so we're going to look at this is fairly self-explanatory, but we'll go and look at Year 7 and Year 8 and just look at the way in which this works, because there are a couple of things that I particularly like in this, and some of the things that I want to point out to you that you may or may not. I'll just put that away for a moment. So now we've got, okay, achievement standards, subject achievement standard, and the achievement standard for Years 7 and 8, and then the subject achievement standard are 2 slightly different things, and you'll read about those when you get up the top. And now we've got this divided into our knowledge and understanding and our processes and production skills. That hasn't changed. That's pretty much the same as it was before. These are the content descriptors, and they've really just got AC9 and a few extra bits of business tacked in. The thing I'd really encourage you to look at, if you've not already done so, is to look at this elaborations. And that was largely, well, not my sole contribution. That's what a lot of us worked on when we couldn't go and visit schools because we had COVID. So down here, you've got a reference to the general capabilities, and that's where digital literacy comes in. It used to be called ICT, general capabilities. It's now called digital literacies. The jury's still out on whether that makes it clearer or makes it a little bit more muddy. I'm not too sure. But those general capabilities, where do they fit in? And we can disclose those or not. And these elaborations enable you to see, okay, what can I do? What sort of activities can I do here to get an idea about how I satisfy that content descriptor? And they're quite good. And there's also that link back to digital literacy exposed to you in there. Now, when you go through and have a look at some other stuff, there's related content. So now you've got the opportunity to do that cross-curricular stuff, because it says, okay, in civics and citizenship, this is what they've got to do. So you've got 2 birds with the 1 stone, you know. It's making a lot more sense, and it makes it relevant to kids, right? Today we're going to collect data. Why? Why are we doing that? You know, well, today we want to solve this problem from citizenship and civics, and therefore we need to collect data. So what can we do with it? And that's where all of this stuff works out together. Look at all the links which are in there. I think this is the fantastic part about it, not the content. It's the fact that it's starting to relate a whole bunch of things to everything else. So we'll just put that away for a sec and then go and have a look at resources. And this is something which is, I think, really important, and a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that it's there. So you want to see, well, what does this look like? What does general capability look like? Or what does working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders histories and cultures look like? Or what does digital technology primary curriculum planning, what does that look like? So you've got all of these things in here, being able to see how someone else has done it. So some of them haven't been updated to version 9 yet. They're still in the old 8.4 because they take quite a long time to develop, as you'll see in a minute. And then down here, a lot of these are 8.4 as well. You say, okay, well, here are the curriculum connections to, you'll see there, food and fibre, food and wellbeing, et cetera, et cetera. And it depends upon which jurisdiction you're teaching within. If you're in the Northern Territory, you're teaching Australian curriculum as it is. If you're in New South Wales, where I am at the moment, then you're teaching what the New South Wales Education Standards Authority is saying, you're going to take this bit out and you're going to do it this way. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. Victoria does that and West Australia does it, but all the rest of the states and territories in Australia teach the Australian curriculum as it is. So let's go and have a look at, two of them. This fella here and this one here. So the digital technologies in focus was the project that I was involved in, and you can see, you can read through this till the cows come home, but we're just going to go and have a look at 8.4 resources. Version 9 aren't finished yet, and have a look at what resources are available. So here are the key ideas and concepts of the curriculum. And here are some tutorials on how to do stuff. Here are the implications for planning, for teaching. So let's go and have a look. Well, go to the key ideas and concepts first off and have a look at what's in there. So the whole idea behind the digital technologies curriculum is creating preferred futures. In fact, that's behind a lot of education areas. You can see a whole bunch of different things in here and what years they're suited to. What sort of things can I do that fit with the digital technologies? Well, there's one or two there. There's quite a few, isn't there? How do I handle this thing called computational thinking or design thinking and systems thinking? Well, here's some extra stuff. So here's all about computational thinking in the Australian curriculum. Now, this is done by a guy called James Curran, Dr. James Curran, or a professor, I think he is now, from Sydney University. And he runs a thing called the Grok Academy, which we'll look at in a second or two if we've got the time. Now in here, there's a bunch of stuff about computational thinking. And there's a poster there that you can stick up somewhere. And it says, okay, there's also a link here that, you know, you can click on that and get taken straight to the place. These are the elements that ACARA has decided are important. If you do a Google search for what are the elements of computational thinking, you'll get the usual responses. You know, here are the 7 elements, here are the 5, here are the 53 elements. Everyone's different perspective on things. So you're never going to get a total agreement on what are the essential ingredients. What's here is what was based on what we saw as important in our work in schools. So there's a couple of issues there. One is that people don't understand abstraction. Decomposition, they understand. Break the problem into parts. Okay. Big problem, lots of little problems. Makes it much easier. Pattern recognition and generalization aren't too bad. You know, if I do this for this particular thing, oh, there's a pattern there. I could apply that to that. And that's a generalized, that begins the process of generalization. Algorithms, most people think that's got something to do with coding. It doesn't. Algorithm is basically writing out the recipe. You know, the things which kids have on the board that says, when I get to school, this is what I do. And then we do this. And then we have sip and crunch, or crunch and sip, or whatever it's called in your state. They eat apples and drink juice or something. And then they do some mathematics, and then they go to lunch, and then they have a sport, and then they go and get their bus. Right. So that's written up on the board for them with pictures, maybe. That's an algorithm. The recipe's an algorithm. The interesting thing is that a lot of people think that coding's an algorithm, and that coding is the ultimate important thing of this. And I don't think it is. I think it's how do you solve a problem is the most important thing. It's got to do with critical thinking. It's got to do with creative thinking. Well, it's got to do with communication, and it's got to do with whatever the fourth P is in the 21st century skills. I can't remember what it is. Collaboration, because they've got to work together to solve a lot of those things. So there are a lot of resources which are available to you there, which you can scrape through and have a squiz at. The other filler is, and you'll see this a lot in schools, is this thing about STEM. Now, most of the STEM programs that I've looked at in schools are either science or making robots, and that's about it. That's as far as it goes. There's some mathematics in some instances, and it's often done as something either lunchtime or a club after school. It's rarely done as a combined thing. So one of the things, and I'll put this directly into the link, is illustrations of practice of what this looks like when it's done well. And this one in particular, which is a local school that I was working with, and that's not why I picked it. It's just that the school itself is pretty amazing with what it does. So I'd urge you and encourage you, I'll put that into the chat, to go and have a look at that. It's only 5 minutes long after this, and get an idea of what happened with year 3, 4, and what they did in that particular unit. There's lots and lots and lots of stuff here which you can get as ideas for how to go about teaching this stuff. I just closed something I didn't want to close. I closed the chat. What a silly person. I'll open it back up again. There you go. So I'm going to close this and have a look at a couple more things before we go any further. The big difference between the general capability of digital literacy is that you're looking at using digital tools safely and wisely. So you're doing something with the tools that are available to you. Now, I hesitate to say that you're not creating anything, because you might create a movie, you might create a multimodal thing, you might create an essay, all sorts of different things, but you are not using the digital technology to provide a solution to a problem. And that's where the digital technologies curriculum is what it's all about. Digital literacy is about this stuff, but it's practicing safety, it's managing, it's project management, it's investigating, and it's creative. And you exchange that information with other people. It's highly reliant on design thinking. So let's go and find out what the problem actually is. Secondly, let's come up with a bunch of ideas and not say we're going to go with the first idea we come up with, go up with a whole bunch of different ideas, select which best meets the brief that you've discussed from the first part of design thinking, build a prototype, test it against not just does it do what it's supposed to do, but can people use it? So you're looking at it from the perspective of user experience. And that also comes into the digital technologies curriculum when you start to say, okay, how do we change that to make it easier for people to use? So we've looked at that. If we go to a thing called Grok, which is groklearning.com, you can pick up a free account on this, because if you're a teacher, you just say that I'm a teacher, your CDU email will be sufficient to do that in most cases. And this goes and unpacks all of these things that you're expected to deal with if you are working in the digital technologies arena. This is still useful information if you're only working with the general capability of digital literacy, but it's more relevant to digital technologies. How do you go about doing stuff? So, okay, data interpretation, what does that mean? Well, click on that, and then it unpacks it all for the different levels. I'm teaching that in year 3-4. Okay, well, let's unpack that for 3-4. And then it goes and says, okay, this is all the different stuff that is relevant to that. Blah, 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 blah. Really useful. So I'm going to bung groklearning.com into the chat, because I know that we're rapidly running out of time, and look at one last one, which is the Digital Technologies Hub. Are you guys aware of this? Digital Technologies Hub, ever heard of it? Okay. So the Digital Technologies Hub is set up by Education Services Australia. It's federally funded, and it's got some fantastic people working in it. So here is understanding how to plan and prepare. You can read the rest. And it's also got something in there which is really useful is for families, so that you can say to parents, put in a parent newsletter, this is what we're doing this year. You're interested in that? Go and have a look. All right. This is written in parent speak so that they can understand what's going on. So, wow. Sorry, I've yabbered on for quite long, haven't I, Kashmira? My apologies. But hopefully there's something that you can go back over and have a squiz at to tease out some of those ideas that I've been talking about.
Yeah.
I was going to have 20 minutes for Q&A, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right. If I mean, because we have very, very small audience, and this is precisely the reason I have decided to kind of like take that pain to kind of like download this whole recording on my computer, put it on YouTube so that I can see the analytics, you know, and how many people are watching. I mean, I told them that they have to understand the value of interacting with, you know, experts, but yeah. Anyway, so Crystal, George, Home, Michaela, if you have any questions for Martin, yeah, you can ask. Stage is yours.
So let me ask a question of you. Was that daunting, or was that something that, yeah, I want to get involved in this?
Yes, that was incredibly daunting. As someone like, you know, this is my third career. I'm 50 years old. I have, in my past careers, I've not used a lot of ICT or anything like that. They were trades. But at the same time, it's like, I think I'm just telling myself to calm down and not be overwhelmed by it, because if I can learn it, then I can teach it. I am surprised. I'm still right at the beginning of my teaching degree, that when I was in my prac, I was not seeing a whole lot of ICT being used in my classrooms that I was in.
Yeah, you'll still see a lot of worksheets. You know, you'll still see a lot of this. This is the activity that the whole class is doing, irrespective of how the kids are. There's a huge diversity within a classroom, and a lot of people say, oh no, none of these kids are neurodiverse, none of these kids are autistic, we can just treat them all the same way and give them the same workshop. Well, the worksheet, that's not what's happening. And the thing I think that I take away from this is that there is not one person in the world who's going to know how to do all of those things. All right? They may be, if they've been working in that arena for, 40 or 50 years, they've got a handle on it. But to walk into a classroom and expect that you're going to have an answer for every question that's asked, I think is you're fooling yourself. But secondarily, I think it's the wrong message to give kids. When I was teaching a year 9 class, I can still remember this because they were all boys and they're all car mad. And we needed to do some work on spreadsheets as part of the unit that I was teaching. So I was like, walked into class, what's better, Holden or Ford? And immediately you set up this, Ford's better than Holden and blah, blah, blah. So well, prove it to me. Oh, Ford won such and such. Ford won Panorama, 4 years in a row. I said, yeah, but I'm not going to drive that down the road to go to Coles. I want something that does something else. So what I want you to do is to show me things like cost, How much it costs to service? How many miles or kilometers am I expecting this to last? What sort of things can it do? Where are its downfalls? And model the purchase of that car over that period of time. And I was still getting kids saying to me, how many litres per 100 does a Commodore get? I don't know. There's this thing called the internet. You might have heard of it. Maybe go and Google that and find out, because they're still reliant on this one person telling them truth. And that's nonsense. It's not how anyone works. And it's not truly reflective of our society. So I think one of the things that we have to do is not do what happened to us in class, where you had one person who was the font of all knowledge, and accept the fact that this kid is going to know more than you are. Right? So if you give the kids access to Scratch, they've got heaps more time than you have. They're going to learn that really quickly, and they're going to come up with some really good stuff. So I'm taken back to when an English teacher at the last school I was at said, look, he resisted technology totally. And he said, I've got to do this thing in English now. It's part of the syllabus. And I had this idea, can you help me? And I said, yeah, sure. What do you want to do? He said, I want the kids to make a movie of the novel that we're doing at the moment and take the part of someone that they really enjoyed in that novel and act out on to the camera on their computers a scene from it. That sounds really interesting. Yeah, sure, we'll do that. So we did that over a period of 4 to 5 weeks, and the kids all did their demonstration of what they did, and they came up with some amazing things. And then we were sitting down debriefing it afterwards, and he said, I'm never going to do that again. And I said, why is that? And he said, well, did you see that last kid? Yeah. He said, his movie, in between this scene and that scene, he'd had fireworks going out on it, and it went like this from one scene to the next. I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. I said, well, did it advance the narrative or did it develop the character? He said, no, it was crap. There you go. You're an English teacher. You're not a teacher of media. So be an English teacher and tell the kids, that's good, bad, or indifferent for these reasons, or ask them, why did you do that? Does that advance the narrative or does that develop the character? So I think, just that giving up of control and allowing kids to learn more than you do is something that's really important. If you don't, then it becomes really daunting. I agree with you, Joy. It becomes really daunting because you'll never know it all. Hey, anyone else got any comments that they want to make? Tom, you've been very quiet in the background there.
Michaela is asking, I'm just wondering, we will eventually be totally digital, no worksheet anymore. Yeah, I just said possibly, depending on the schools. Not all schools will go, digital together, but yeah, they might, because like NAPLAN gone digital. So they got to know what they have to do in NAPLAN in the computers itself. But I think, Martin, one of the things that I aim to do with this unit, and from my past experience, which was very successful in that regard, is that giving them experience how to teach. So there is a lot of resources, and it's not that if I don't provide them through LearnLine, they will not learn, because there is everything that I have said has come from somewhere, either research paper or some internet resources, or somebody like Martin who said, hey, Kashmir, just go and have a look, and I have added them, and this is how it is developed. And so what we decided to do, and I really, Martin, this semester a bit, and with John's support, of course, it worked, that we negotiated with the school that we will not have a formal lectures. So every week I come in with the PowerPoint and tell you things that I have already told you in LearnLine, but rather we will have you read that. If you have questions, I guarantee the response in 24 hours, no matter where I am or what I'm doing, in holidays, anytime. And also that they listen to experts like yourself and learn and experience that zest of being a teacher, and what it looks like having a teacher and what it feels like, and all of that, and then interact with those experts. So it's you, and there are a few more who are really experienced in their field, coming in and talking to them. And after this, after 15th, I will be there for like every week, half an hour for them to, if they have any questions. And so just facilitate, support, and learn from each other. That's what I
No, that's
to learn.
great. Yeah, it's really the only way, isn't it? That
Yes. Yeah.
That's and really, I guess when Michaela said, "Will we eventually go totally digital, no worksheets anymore?" I think there's a place for pen and paper still. I have a thing called Levins's first law of computing, and that is that if you're ever going to try to use a computer to solve a problem, the first thing you should do is turn it off and sit down with a 2B pencil and a bit of paper and just perhaps about so you work out exactly what it is that you're trying to do. Otherwise, you're inhibiting your creativity because you don't know everything that technology can do. And therefore, you will restrict yourself to what you know it can do. And then you'll end up not challenging yourself, not doing interesting things which will pop into place. So to get back to that worksheet example, I've seen a lot of schools that have had, photocopied worksheets that they've given kids in the past. And then the school gives every kid a laptop in the school. And what the teachers then do is to scan the worksheet so that it's a PDF, and then they email it to the kids and say, print this out at home and fill it out. And you say, well, what have we achieved? Nothing.
Nothing.
It's exactly the same as we've done before, except now it's costing us $1,000 a year to do it. It's insane. And then you go back to that TPAC stuff that we started out with, and so technology changes things. So all of a sudden, getting the kids to do drill and practice and just busy work is a nonsense. Give them something that they've got agency in. And is that a West Highland white? Looks, it's a cat.
No, it's a Westie.
That's a Westie. There he is. Yeah.
There he is. So, like, I'll have some attention. I can imagine. While I've got the mic, I was just thinking. No wonder that when you went into school, you felt like you were a performing monkey, and everyone got really hyped up about it. Because as an overview, today seemed really like exciting. It seemed like that for me. I'm like, wow, maybe I can get this, and this would be really awesome. And it's not something to be scared of. But unless there was, I guess, the follow-up and the practical side of that, it might have been hard for them to implement.
Yes, it is hard, and that's the follow-up is really important. And unfortunately, we were spread pretty thin. I would have liked to have followed up, within 2 weeks and gone back into the school and worked with them, and then gone back into the school again 2 weeks after that. We did have a commitment from the schools to do a lot of action research, but realistically, that didn't happen within a lot of schools. But look, it is exciting. It's exciting because you see and watch that video, and you'll see the joy on the kids' faces. That's what turns me on, not whether or not they get X, Y, Z in that plan, because I know that if I've got them interested, they want to learn more. And that's much more powerful than being able to answer question 6 on the worksheet. Much more powerful. And I think we also underestimate kids significantly. I worked with a kindergarten class in Maningrida, and the teacher said, how the hell do we teach digital systems with kindergartens? And I said, well, I don't know, maybe you look at what are all the different parts of the devices that they use at the moment. So the teacher said, oh, that's a good idea, and sat down in front of the kids and said, right, kids, sit down in front of me. This is a keyboard. This is a monitor. And I said, hold on. Let's try a different approach. So I said, you've got a whole bunch of cardboard and pipe cleaners and sellotape and God knows what at the back of your classroom. The kids, go and make a digital device. That was it. And off they went. And they made cameras and they made computers and they made all sorts of different things. And one little girl, kindergarten, is showing her thing to the teacher, and it's a square thing with buttons on it representing something, and a piece of baking paper over the screen. And why have you got that there? What does that do? And she says, oh, well, I couldn't really get it to do a password. So you can't see what's on the screen until you lift it up. And then you can see what's on the screen. How sophisticated is that? And then the teacher says, you got 2 pipe cleaners sticking out the top. What are they for? And the kid says, oh, well, this is Wi-Fi and this is 4G. Kindergarten. And I said, and you're going to show them what a keyboard is. All right. So now all of a sudden, take that enthusiasm, you just couldn't stop them from making stuff. Take that and get them to build their ideal digital device, right? Combine all these different things. And how are you going to get information from here to there? What are you going to do? And all of a sudden that opens up a huge, interesting discussion. And irrespective of whether it satisfies a curricular outcome or not, it helps them understand their world. And once they understand their world, they've got some control, some agency over it. And they'll think, oh, wait a minute, maybe I won't do that thing on social media because it might have this implication. We could go on and on and on. Oh, well, boy, you're silly, so I'm going to stop. But Kashmira, thanks for the opportunity. It's lovely to meet you guys.
Martin, there is one more question, and this is a concern. And sometimes, I'm thinking it's kind of like a retro adoption, but and Michaela's concern, which my concern is. So let me ask. He said, I think that like digital technology will take over, but students won't be handwriting anymore. That means drawing, or what would happen to visual art or subject like music? Because I mean, I think her concern is legitimate, because when you start using your, fingers, like in terms of like a motor skill as such, and your fingers can only do this or this. I mean, would that have some impact on, you think, how the performing arts or visual art is, taught or learned among students in the digital era, like?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as I said earlier on, there's a place for a pen and pencil and paper. There's a place for all of those things. Even within computing, that as soon as you're going to solve a problem with a computer, turn the bloody thing off and sit down and nut out what it is that you actually want to do. Insofar as handwriting is concerned, I don't know, Michaela, we could talk about that forever. When was the last time you handwrote? How useful is it? We talk to our kids who have to know how to do long division because no one's going to have a calculator on them all the time. Well, they do now. It's in their phone, right? It's on their watch, for God's sake. So why learn that skill in that way if it's impeding some of the bigger things that you might want to get out of stuff? So I think it's not a binary choice. It's not technology or no technology. It's a continuum, and where have we got stuff that, what is the best tool for the job? Let's put it that way. Don't you think?
Michaela, want to say something?
Yeah, I'm just not sure, because it happened you know, in grade 7, we do encourage students to use their laptops and everything. But then it comes, some of them are very good, but then some of them, they can use words, like, which is like, you know, a simple program. So I'm not too sure what's the, you know, what the expectation is gonna be there.
What is, sorry, what the
expectation is gonna be, like, these students meant to come in high school and they are meant to be using the laptop, or you know, they meant to be good at using Word and Excel or those sort of programs.
Sure. You know, I think that's a whole other discussion, which I don't think we're going to have time for tonight. But maybe it's just, maybe they don't see the relevance of using it. You know, why should I use Word?
Yeah.
Now, why have I got to use Word? Why are you using Word anyway? Why aren't you using Google Docs? Why are you using Pages? You know, why are you using Word? I would guarantee you that if we were to get every Word user who uses it regularly in their business and said to them, how many of you know how to process words? How many of you know how to generate a table of contents and an index automatically? You'll be less than 1% who would know how to do that. And that's word processing. Most people just use it as an electric typewriter. They don't actually process words. And so, you know, if I said to you, I'm going to teach you how to service a Weber carburetor, what would you say to me?
How are you gonna teach me that? Like, what are we gonna, how are you gonna, what are you gonna use to teach me?
I'm going to use a Weber carburetor. I'm going to teach you how to service it. You happy to do it?
No.
Why?
Because I haven't been told before.
Okay.
Or maybe because that, I mean, as much as, you know, you may be a good teacher, but that's not relevant for me.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there are very few very few cars that use carburetors at all. You know, why the hell would I need to do that? And I think that's what we need to, when a kid says to you in class, why are we doing this? That's a good call. Right? The kid should know why they're doing it. It should be relevant and it should be in context, I think.
Yeah.
And if they're saying to you, why do we have to do this? And your answer is because it's in the curriculum, there must be a reason for it. And that's why doing things as a cross-curricular, when you get the opportunity to do that, all of a sudden makes that possible.
Yeah. Okay, well, sorry, we will have to close. It's already 8:22, and I'm like very secretly worried about the length of the recording that I have to upload tonight. I mean, sorry about that, but I mean, look, all four of you here and whoever will be watching this recording afterwards, I'm giving you a challenge. Give me, if you have a burning question about anything that is related to pre-service teacher education, and if you really keen to hear somebody about it, talking about it, let me know and I will organize people or panel and let's discuss this, okay? So just, I mean, it doesn't have to be IT in education. If there is any burning question around teacher education, just bring it on and we will discuss and have fun, because that's what teaching is all about. Because I'm very sure that if all the material is given to you, you will learn and you will pass. So that's not entirely the goal of this unit at all. So let's talk. And if you have anything that you think you can give me a reason why you want to discuss that or want to hear experts in the area, throw that questions to me, and or we will organize an online session.
Okay, and I've just put a YouTube link up to a bunch of videos which are predominantly on digital technologies, not on digital literacy, but you might find some of them useful.
Sure.
So been lovely to meet you, and thank you for putting up with my blathering.
Thanks,
and
Martin. Lovely.
I hope to catch you
learned a lot
again.
as well.
We all learn when we work together, don't we?
Yeah, and so all the links that you have put in the chat, I will share it with everyone as well. Along
Sure.
with the recording, and I'll share it with you as well, Martin. Thank you so much.
Oh, great. Okay. Good to see you again, Kashmira. Bye, guys. Have a lovely night. See ya.